Welcome to another episode of Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and this is my husband and co-host, Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow! Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindi Baldi, and across the room is Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow.
The wonderful
Yellow.
Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow.
Today we are going to talk about mentoring and how you need to stop looking all around you for your mentor because they're probably right underneath your foot.
That's right. Stop doing Where's Waldo because you got 20 Waldos around you. Mm-hmm. You just need to grab the one you need. I view mentors like Porsches.
Okay. Well,
almost everybody wants one, but you really don't need one because what the Porsche can actually do for you is get you to the grocery store, and so can the minivan and the truck that are already in your garage. And so you don't need a Porsche. But people think because this word it has a brand cachet like Porsche, mentor. If you're listening to this podcast and you think you don't have a mentor, my position is you do. You probably have 3. You have what you need already in the garage. And you think you need a Porsche because Porsche means Porsche. But you don't need a Porsche. You got a truck. And people don't need a mentor, or people don't need a mentor by name because they have the social or instrumental or relational support they need already. They just need to recognize it and access it. So for example, let's take a new manager, right? And so somebody just became a new manager. And so it's a big learning curve. And so I want a mentor. I want a mentor to help me be a better new manager. Well, I would tell that person, we get these conversations all the time. I would tell that person, all right, who do you know? Well, I know Sarah and I know Jim. They know all these people who've already been managers. I say, all right, are you close to any of them? Well, it's been a while since I talked to Sarah, but we used to be pretty tight. I could probably, okay, well, call her and, ask her, can I think through this with you? Send her a text message. Can I think through this with you? Do you have a little time while I'm kind of getting my sea legs? And 9 times out of 10, these people you already know are going to be extremely generous with your time, with their time. And you'll never call it that because it would be goofy for you to go back to somebody who you knew a couple of years ago and just haven't had a lot of contact with. But now that you're a new manager, you want to talk with this person and say, hey, will you be my mentor? And they still probably say yes, but you don't need that official, like you said, Facebook status change. You just need to call Sarah and have her in your hip pocket to help you think through some of your challenges as a new manager.
Yeah, as I'm listening to you talk, I think that what they're really saying when they say I need a mentor, and it could be that they actually need a mentor for like a specific thing that they haven't done and they don't have one already existing in their network. But the idea that they've never had a mentor is probably not accurate. But I think what they're really saying when they say I need a mentor is I don't know. Well, one of the possibilities of what they're saying is I don't know like how to actually use my social capital. Right? Because if you know Sarah's out there, Sarah's been in your shoes before.
Right.
So why aren't you calling her until somebody says, hey, why don't you call Sarah?
I think because, let's start it with this kind of category system. Sometimes people want a mentor because they find themselves in the thick of something that they don't know how to navigate. And there's people out there who have navigated it.
Right. And for that, you may not be going to people who you already have in your network. They may not be a good fit.
Right. It depends on what you need. I mean, in the case I used a new manager, it's hard for me to imagine somebody not having
A prior boss.
That's right. But people, but people need far more specific things, right? They need, another example is, we had somebody who basically started work at a company that's about to, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but a guy who all his life has worked for regular companies, regular jobs, good salaries, but then just made a move to a job where it's owned by private equity and it's getting set up to be bought out in 3 to 5 years. And so he needed advice, or in the lingo we're using in this conversation, he needed a mentor to help him navigate what do I ask for taking this role in a company that's going to get bought out. I want a little piece of the upside. I've never done this. And all my experience so far it's never been in private equity. And so he didn't have, because it's a little bit fine-tuned, he didn't have somebody like that in his network. And so we helped him with some people we know to try to bridge that.
I think we need to clarify, what's the difference between just seeking advice and a mentor? Is
somebody, it's probably a good example. I helped connect him with somebody just for that particular transition, but they ended up building a relationship. Right? Because, hey, how do I get myself set up? And then what do I do to try to maximize my chances of actually getting this payout?
Yeah, so I think maybe what I would say is that the difference between potentially advice and mentorship is that the person actually takes like a real interest in you. It's not just giving you advice and then, shooing you along. Even if there's a friendship that stays after the advice is given, because friends give advice all the time, it's that they feel like they take a little bit of ownership of whether or not you're going to make that particular transition or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what a lot of people hope for when they're looking for a mentor. I think when people are asking us often for a mentor, they're sometimes saying, and this is another category, I want somebody more powerful in me in this organization that can help me get promoted faster. And that's, I'm not telling anybody listening to this or you who knows the scientific literature on this. Obviously, it's powerful if you have an internal champion. That comes with the downside of if they get in trouble, depending on how close you are to them, you get in trouble too.
Sure.
But we're usually, a lot of the people who come to us looking for an internal mentor already have people who believe in them. They just haven't, to use your word from a few minutes ago, they haven't accessed that. And that, I think, goes back to my analogy of the Porsche.
That is what goes back to your analogy, for sure.
Yeah. My only heartburn with mentoring is most of the time, it's like this thing that people think they need. And I'm not disputing the value of having somebody who either has been through something you haven't and can help you, or takes an interest in you and is willing to build a relationship that's beneficial, of sharing some of their knowledge along the way, and can be in between all these statements, is in your organization and can help pull you along and identify and make happen for you opportunities that you might not be able to have happen on your own. My only point, this will be the last time I say it, so I'm not repeating myself, is that almost everybody who comes to me asking for a mentor, we go through just a little mental drill, and then they figure out where those people already are.
Yeah. So stage one is doing the mental drill. Like once you realize what you need, then it's going through and thinking about who the people in your network who are actually like applicable.
Yeah.
That would potentially have the expertise and then approaching them. I used to do an exercise. I'm pretty sure the students hated it. But I used to do an exercise where they would have to go across campus and ask to borrow somebody's phone, ask for directions, basically just asking people for help. And they definitely hated this project. But after doing it, they all realized people are like really happy to help.
Sure.
Because, I mean, you know, those are simple things that you're asking people to do, but it does make people feel good that they're able to lend a hand. But when it comes to like a mentorship type thing, it's also a recognition that you're really good at something. Like it's a compliment.
Yeah, sure.
When somebody's coming to you and being like, hey, can you help me out?
Yep. Yeah.
And so I think the reason why I'm mentioning this is because I do think that one of the things that we see a lot is people who have the, you know, minivan in the garage and they want the Porsche. I think really the reason that they're not using it is because they don't know how to access their social networks.
Right.
Because they feel bad. They feel like a burden, but you're actually, you know, potentially giving a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a better way of saying it, the way you said it. The problem isn't you don't have a person. The problem is you're not asking. Like you've got most people, and we should devote a little bit of airtime here to talking about when they don't have a mentor, but most people actually have people who would be willing to help for all the reasons that you said from your experiment, which is consistent with the research on helping behaviors, especially when people, not even when people know you, but especially when people know you.
These were just strangers that I had been doing.
Yeah. And to your point, people help because they can and you feel good, but people also help for the very reason you mentioned. It makes them feel like they have something to share. And there's
something that they have that's valuable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And so that's probably, you know, the first kind of hidden cost of mentorship is, it's maybe a better way of saying it's not so much a hidden cost as a misunderstanding.
I won't say that there isn't a cost because somebody is taking time and investing in you and they're willing to open up their brain and give you information that maybe they're not sharing widely. So, I mean, there is a cost, but they're doing it because they are getting a benefit out of it. And maybe it's that they like you and it makes them feel really good to help you out. Yeah. Maybe it's because like they've never been recognized for that before. I mean, like I can't even count how many times I've done something that is just innate. Like it's just who I am, or it's how it feels, how I am. And somebody's like, nobody's ever told me that before.
Yeah.
And like that, I mean, that makes you feel good, right? But you're like, wow, I didn't even know that had any value.
Yeah. 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 It's interesting. You know, I think a lot about like, because I've been with you for the last 20 plus years, I know how much you know about statistics. And so it always amazes me when people we know who appear to know you, and I know you do anything for, need help with statistics and that they don't ask. And it's just
looking at you, Spencer.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But there are others. Like there's people who are interested in, I want to go into data science, or I want to do this or that. There's a lot of stuff. Let me try to do an itemized list of all the things that give me heartburn about mentoring, right? Like the world has placed all of these people who are willing to help you everywhere. And people still come to us and they think they need a mentor because it's this special little word. Like it's, you know what it is? It's a buzzword, like empowerment. It's a buzzword.
It is, but it's also this reluctance
to ask.
And so you want, instead of asking and taking that risk that you might be rejected, which honestly, it's probably very small. And if you get rejected, it's going to be like because the person just doesn't have the time, not because of anything about you. They just don't have the time. So it's like a pretty light rejection possibility here. And, you know, so, but people don't want to take that chance. And so what they're saying is, I want somebody else to make the ask for me. Here, can you hand this note to this girl I want to go out on a date with? Right? So that way they don't have to make take that risk.
Right. That's right. Yeah. That's a good way of saying it. That's my heartburn with mentoring programs. That's what this should be titled. Heartburn with mentoring. So mentoring programs are bull just for the reason that you mentioned. It's basically a shortcut that like, well, how come my company doesn't have a mentoring program? Well, because your company doesn't need one. You like, go ask for the help you need. Go ask for they're out there. And most of them, as you mentioned, are going to say yes. And if they say no, if everybody says no to the help, you don't have a mentoring problem. You have a culture problem. And if we create a mentoring, by the way, we don't have a mentoring program because you don't need one. Because all right, well, we're going to have a program and then we're going to match up and, who's looking for a mentor and then who's willing to give a little time.
And it totally neglects the actual skills that the person is
what do you need
for.
What do they have?
And your most obvious person from like a technical standpoint who would make sort of like the most sense in terms of like giving you a path that is more certain is your boss. But your boss can't be your mentor.
Yes. Or in some cases, but not
formally, they can't be your mentor. Like informally, they can be your mentor because the bosses have to be careful about that too, because they got other people underneath them.
Like if you have 10, you're not mentoring 10.
And you can't do 2 and leave out the other 8.
Right.
And it's hard when you're mentoring to then have to be the person who is also, playing the role of the controls for the organization, which that's one of the core things that managers do is they hold people accountable.
Yeah. Cindy brings up a good point. To reiterate it, the problem with your boss mentoring you is that your boss probably has multiple direct reports and everybody else is going to hate you. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they're going to hate that. They're like, this is bull. Why is Cindy going out to lunch with this person all the time?
And then you're in a world where you possibly have a boss who actually expects more out of you. But because everybody recognizes that you're getting this preferential treatment.
Yeah, it's a problem.
That they all think that you're getting away with murder.
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen that. Right. Yeah. And then the boss, because they really like this person and this person's done a lot of good stuff for them because they've given them more good stuff to do, then the boss is like, well, I just picked the person who does the best. Well, you created
watered that flower.
That's right. Yeah. 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 And so, turns out I got a lot of problems with mentoring.
No, you don't really have problems with mentoring. You have problems with how it unfolds in organizations at the moment.
There's a chicken.
Which
one is that?
That's cacciatore.
No, I thought that was fajita.
No, fajita I think is over there.
All right. Yeah.
I got a lot of chickens.
Yeah.
They're like my pets now. Thank you, Design at Work.
Yep, they did all right. Your company doesn't need a mentoring program. Everybody could use people in their life to help them through novel challenges, think through novel challenges. Everybody can benefit from the wisdom of people who have experience that we don't. And everybody benefits from having someone who takes an interest in the context of what we're talking about, your career, and to a certain extent, your life as well. Those people usually exist in duplicate, in triplicate in your life. You just need to ask for the support that you need or you want in the vast majority of cases. And then that person becomes a mentor, even if they're not, as you said, Facebook status change, formally a mentor. They're still performing that role of providing the wisdom, support, and the interest in what you're doing.
Hello, musers. Now it's time for commercial break.
All right, listen, time to ring the cash register. If your company is going through a significant leadership change, we got something for you. We have multiple packages designed to help onboard the new person, whoever that's going to be. We can even help figure out what your people are looking for in the next leader of the division or the unit or the organization. And then when you select her or him, we can help accelerate their climb up the learning curve, make it more likely that they get off on the right foot and that your company doesn't miss a beat as you move from one senior executive to another. Call us On-Demand Leadership, Senior Leader or CEO Transition Program. We're on it like an Easter bonnet.
Now, if you don't have that, because maybe you're just doing something very different, I feel like you and I have had that to some degree because we oftentimes are on paths without company, right? Like,
yeah, for certain things we're trying to do.
Yeah, for certain things, I don't think anybody has figured them out. And so, or very few people, they've been hard to find. And so for those, what are we suggesting they do to try to find those mentors?
Well, I think one of the many beauties of this era of everybody having a podcast.
It's true.
And, you know,
here we are mentoring.
Yeah, is that your thing? Like, you know, Cindi and I, as she mentioned, you know, we have had for many, many years, I mean, well over a decade, almost, what is this, 18th or 19th year, a consulting business with a lot of clients, but we haven't shared much of our knowledge. It's all been behind closed doors. And so we've been trying to make that step from how do you maintain a successful consulting business, but increasingly open up more of your expertise to other people. And so it's, there's not a mentor. We know nobody in our social circle, and it's pretty extensive because we have been in
a ton of organizations.
Yeah, all kinds of companies all across the United States, especially Texas, but all across the United States for many years. And there's nobody who's done that. And the times that I've tried to ask a couple people in my network who I respect, who've done big things, I mean, I'll say they've tried to help, but
they're not the,
there's no way they can help.
They're not the one that's ahead.
Right.
So like, for example, this podcast, right? Like we don't, you know, I had to learn equipment, you know, on YouTube, and YouTube had told me what to buy, like found somebody who seemed to make sense. And I followed their advice, and then, you know, kind of pieced it together with a couple of sources and narrowed things down. And we tried, like some of our most successful friends who
and no clue,
pretty good at promoting themselves.
Yep.
We asked, we're like, you know, what are you doing for this? And they're like,
Well, I don't know.
Don't know what we're
Yep.
doing. Like, just not in this lane at all. And so, we've been doing this podcast and we've made every mistake imaginable.
Literally.
Because there has been nobody that we have found in our network to sort of guide the way.
Yeah.
And the path is riddled with people who say they'll give you something, that they have something. And this is, this would be a business transaction, right? Like, we'd be hiring the coach. And then you sort of sniff around and you're like, yep, not sure that's actually.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I hate to bring everything back to the same old message, but it's another example of, like, we don't need a mentor. We have the internet.
You don't need a mentor, but imagine
Sure.
how much easier it would be if we actually had somebody in our network who was like,
I know how to do that, do this, do that.
I mean, your cousin the other day, like, lit up our world with SEO, and he did it in 2 sentences because the guy is an SEO genius.
Who, you're talking about Greg again?
No, not Leggy.
Oh, JD?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're both geniuses.
They're both geniuses.
Yeah.
But,
And they're a good example.
Yeah.
Of, these are 2 of my cousins. They both actually figured out search engine optimization, which for you.
In very different ways.
Yep. But we're occasionally mess around with a little bit of that, but we know nothing and they know, I would say, close to virtually everything.
I think that they're probably at the top of their game in terms of expertise on SEO.
Yeah. And, like, they're a mentor for us in that space. And over the years, we've used them in various ways. And they're still willing to be used. They already exist. And, these are 2 of my cousins. I don't think they would consider that. They don't consider that they're our mentors. They consider that they're our cousins. But they perform for us figuring out this thing, SEO, search engine optimization, that they know very well. They absolutely function like a mentor. And they've been with us through some of the journey and so forth. For this podcast, we couldn't find a mentor. So what do? Internet. Hard knocks. Yes, it could have been easier. But most of the people listening to this, I dare say, aren't doing something that's so specific that they don't have people in their network. I mean, the purpose of our podcast is for managers. And so a lot of our
you're
managers,
within a structure.
Yeah. And they're growing up. They're adding on more. They're maybe grabbing a hold. Now they have P&L responsibility. Well, you can go to the internet for that, but there's probably 6 people who love you who have run a P&L for, 10 to 15 to 20 years.
Can you explain what a P&L is?
Yeah, this basically, you have a budget, a profit and loss. So every company is different, but there are a lot of companies where you're a manager and you have control of your people, but somebody else gives you the budget. And here's your budget. And you don't really have much say over it.
Right.
And then there's a manager with P&L responsibility.
Right.
And
that scares the daylights out of most managers, by the way.
No. So if you're a manager out there listening and you're about to take over budgetary responsibility for your department or your division or your unit, you know people who've already done this. Go find 1 or 2 of them, or just one. You only need 1. And ask, would you be willing to help me think through this? And that's your mentor. Here's another thing I should say. Never ask somebody to be your mentor.
Yeah.
Just ask for the help you need.
Right.
It turns out I have all kinds of problems with this idea. I think the idea is, I think it's a buzzword. I think it's like empowerment.
I think that it's something that is a natural talent for you that a lot of people are drawn to you and you're very good at seeing what they're good at. And if it is something you're also interested in, you just engage.
Well,
but I think for other people, it's not that easy.
Well, thanks, I think, because I think I like the compliment, but then basically you're telling me that I'm not representative of everybody who we're talking about, but okay, maybe I'm not. But I'm still the guy advising. It just doesn't happen every day, but in a year, probably 5 people in a year, maybe that's sound about right. 5 people basically ask me some version of, I need a mentor. Where's my mentor? And we run through the drill every time. What's the help you need? And sometimes they don't even need help. Well, I don't know. I mean, but you shouldn't have one. I don't feel like I have one.
Yeah, we get a lot of that.
Yeah. And
for that, you definitely no, you need a friend. You don't need a mentor unless there's something,
a gap.
Yeah, that you're some future version of yourself you're trying to get to.
Yeah, or something novel you're going through. I mean, do you have the answer to this for most people is yes. Do you have the people in your life who you can call on if you're facing a challenge that's new to you that they might have experience in? And most people can say yes to that. Do you have somebody in the company who can pull you along and make your life easier and better? That's a slightly different question. And that question gets into the relational challenge of the best person to do that is your boss, but your boss has to be careful because your boss has the other direct reports, as you've already mentioned, and is really going to have a hard time if she's showing favoritism. And then when you go outside of your boss to try to get pulled along at the company, then you're like the most efficient way to do that would be to go above your boss. And that is not something we recommend.
Mm-hmm. That will not win you friends.
Or you're going outside of a lane laterally to where you're right?
Yeah.
Like there's no good.
You pretty much, my recommendation would be that you find somebody who isn't in your organization. So you're not violating any of the politics.
Yeah. That's why it's a goofy word, but I like it. When it comes to mentoring, it needs to be organic. And by that, I mean, number one, what you just said, it's probably best if it's somebody who you're not deliberately going after because they can do something for you. That's forced, not organic. Number two, it just needs to happen naturally, meaning you have to ask, but there shouldn't be this formal fit where you're trying to do matchmaking with somebody, where the organization is trying to matchmake people, like comes kind of speed dating, where you get a bunch of the 40-year-olds and you try to pair them up with the 30-year-olds because there's a 10-year, you know what I'm saying? Not like dating, but it
kind of is. It's kind of saying, hey, these are the people who have these skills that they could mentor you on. And then these are the people who need these skills. And so let's put them together. But to what degree did the people who have the skills want to do the mentoring?
Right.
Especially of a specific person. And to what degree did the person who needs the skills feel like they actually need them?
Yeah.
And how much do they want to be mentored by that person?
Yeah. A lot of this comes back to what you've mentioned before. The limitation, I think the main limitation is the people who could help you or mentor you are out there. You're just not asking.
Well, and I also think that sometimes if you really feel a void inside your organization for a mentor, don't have a specific thing that you're striving for, but you just are vocalizing that you feel like you need a mentor. I'm not sure that that's actually what you're saying. Like, I know you're saying it, but
It's a good way of saying
Is it actually that you're saying, I don't feel like I have my people. I don't feel like I belong.
Yeah.
And that does not require mentorship.
Yeah.
And there are things that organizations can do to help you belong, but you actually also have to engage. I mean, like I think about like one of the people who worked for one of the students I hired a number of years ago. I met her because I showed up to, I think like high schools were coming into the university. Like it was like a formal program. The high schools were showing up to like sort of get a tour of the university. And she was a student representative and I was a faculty representative, and she was awesome. And so like we just immediately struck up sort of a mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah.
Where she just started coming in and talking to me, and I liked her so much that like I pretty much found a job for her immediately with us. And like organizations do things all the time that you can participate in and interact with people at different levels of the organization that you wouldn't normally.
Yeah.
But if you're not picking up the line that they're throwing out,
right,
those opportunities aren't going to find you.
Yeah. 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 And that you described was completely natural. It just happened. And sometimes you're going to have to be more deliberate than that. Because as I've mentioned before here a few minutes ago, you're needing something.
Yeah, I didn't need anything from her, but I knew she needed something from me, and I knew I could give it to her. And so I made it happen.
Yeah. 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 And there's a lot of relationships that naturally have a mentoring or developmental piece to them. Teacher, student, there's a mentoring element in boss, subordinate, even though, as we've mentioned, to get around perception of inequity, you want to be mentoring all of your people to a limited extent. You don't have a ton of time if you've got 9 direct reports, but you certainly, most people we know are trying to develop all of their people to a certain degree. Yeah.
You can certainly have the question like, where do you think you want to get going? Like where are your interests? And then when those interests, an opportunity related to those interests arise, I recommend you're actually like recording it. Like you have a conversation with them annually. Like, okay, so where do you think you're going here?
Yeah.
And then like, make an effort. Like, hey, you said you're interested in this. This is an opportunity for you to sort of develop skills on that. Yeah. You interested? Because then it's like, they feel like you were listening. It's you offering a little bit of mentorship.
Yeah.
And it's doing it in a way that even though it may not be even, where you're doing it for everybody at the same time, people can recognize the randomness of the opportunities arising.
Yeah.
And that you're trying to actually match them up and move them all forward in the direction that they want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I read a book by Roger Martin. He was the dean of the Rotman School of Management. I think that's University of Toronto, maybe. Rotman. Rotman.
I don't remember.
Anyway, Roger Martin is the guy's name, but he was dean. And he, to your point, he would once a year bring in the faculty, and he would only ask them 2 questions. What were your goals last year? I mean, I guess with the follow-on, what were your goals last year and did you achieve them? And then what are your goals this year and how can I help? And there's a little bit of a developmental angle in that. And, most faculty wouldn't say the dean is my mentor, but if you have a dean who's asking you, what are your goals and how can I help?
And then showing up when they find opportunities to offer you the chance to meet your goal.
That's mentoring.
Yeah.
And that dean gets away with it. It's not perceived as inequitable because everybody rolls in there and gets the same offer. And presumably, some percent of the faculty take them up on it and some don't, which that gets to your point about the uptake of it. mean, I'm far more surprised by all of the mentoring that could happen that doesn't, because people don't take that step, as you've mentioned, to just ask for a little help. Hey, will you help me think through this? Will you stay with me? You know, I think this will be the last thing that I have to say it's related to this, and you may know the exact parsing of this, but I was surprised. Recently, my dad died, and I was surprised with how many people popped up on the radar to basically help me think through the loss of a parent because they had lost a parent. Most of them, and you know, I was going to say most of them, it was fairly recent, but that's actually not true. Because I've had people who lost a parent 2 years ago to probably 22, and they're, for in the context of this conversation we're happening, that is them self-identifying to me. I'll use our lingo. They're not using, nobody's saying, they didn't pop up and say, hey,
let me mentor you through this.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that's what they're doing.
Yeah. And probably 4 to 5 people immediately popped up. I mean, I could name them all, right? Who probably, Harry Adams, Stu Shapiro, the Robert Isbell, Barry Couch. Mm-hmm. That's 4. Like boom, right? Boom, boom, boom. Mm-hmm. And then Brenda McKinney, you know, and Jody. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, now I'm just kind of thinking through where I've been, and Yvette was another, just because I was there this week. Like, I'm at 7. Yeah. And that's, and Fletcher, you know, like, that's 8. And I'm just, that is just one spot where I happen to have been recently, where half of these people popped up on the net. Not to say I'm sorry they said that, but to basically
here's the wisdom that, you know, I can impart on you. And I've done that for people who lost, you know, like a cousin I don't know. She's actually probably a second cousin. Hi, Marcia. And like her dad and my mom were actually very close. And so anyway, we don't know each other. Like, she grew up in the DC area. We don't have any interactions that I can remember. But when she lost her dad, like, I wrote an email and said, this is how I made it through.
Yeah.
Sure. And it started, like, I mean, we're not contacting each other every week, but like, it started a relationship.
Yeah. You have more mentoring in your life than you think. Stop asking, where's my mentor? And start asking the people in your life for the assistance, help, support, or guidance that you need.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on Management Muse. We are a podcast/YouTube channel that we hope is entertaining and educational. If you are on YouTube, we would appreciate you subscribing and maybe leaving a comment and a like. If you are on any of the podcasts listening to this, we would appreciate stars, following, comments, all the good stuff. We want to say thank you to Christina, Sarah, and Rebecca, and then, of course, everybody at Design at Work. And then, just as a last-minute reminder, we also want to mention that we are management and communication professionals working in the field, but also have degrees that back us in science. All that being said, we are talking in generalities on this podcast. We do not actually know your particular situation. So proceed with common sense and maybe a little bit of experimentation on your end. And we hope that you make the world a more beautiful place by making work a more enjoyable place. See you next time on Management Muse.